My name is Renee. I'm 36 years old, and I just buried my husband James last week after a devastating car accident. Despite my grief, I dragged myself to my nephew Noah's first birthday party to support my sister Amanda. I never expected what happened next. Standing before all the guests, Amanda announced that Noah was actually James's child and demanded half of our $800,000 house as inheritance. I bit my lip trying not to laugh because she had no idea what I knew. Before I reveal what Amanda didn't know, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to follow my journey through life's unexpected twists. James and I shared 7 beautiful years of marriage before tragedy struck. We met at a tech conference where I was organizing the speakers panel. He was presenting his innovative software solution, and I was immediately drawn to his brilliant mind and genuine smile. Our eyes locked across the crowded auditorium, and somehow I knew my life was about to change. After the conference, James approached me with a simple question about the schedule, but we both knew it was just an excuse to talk. Our conversation flowed effortlessly as we discussed technology books and our shared love for vintage record stores. We exchanged numbers, and within a week he called to ask me out for coffee. Those coffee dates turned into dinner dates, museum visits, and weekend hikes. 6 months later, James surprised me with a trip to my hometown in Chicago. Under the twinkling lights of the waterfront, where I had spent countless summers as a child, he got down on one knee and asked me to be his wife. It was the easiest yes I had ever said. James wasn't just intelligent, he was warm, thoughtful, and had a humor that could brighten my darkest days. As a senior software engineer, he spent long hours solving complex problems, but always made time for us. Every anniversary, he would recreate our first date right down to ordering the same dessert we had shared. What I loved most about James was his unwavering loyalty. In a world where relationships often seem disposable, he made me feel secure and cherished. We built our life in a beautiful craftsman-style home just outside Seattle, filling it with books, music, and dreams of the family we hoped to create. When the police called that rainy Tuesday night, my world collapsed. A drunk driver had crossed the median, hitting James's car head-on as he drove home from work. By the time I reached the hospital, racing through the storm with my heart pounding in my chest, it was too late. He was gone, leaving me alone in a world that suddenly felt empty and cold. My relationship with Amanda has always been complicated. Being 5 years younger, she grew up in my shadow, at least that's how she saw it. While I excelled in academics and organized activities, Amanda sought attention in different ways, often taking what wasn't hers. I remember the time I won a writing contest in high school. The trophy sat proudly on my desk until Amanda claimed it disappeared during her cleaning. A week later, I found it hidden in her closet. When confronted, she simply said, "You always get recognition. I just wanted to know how it felt." This pattern continued into adulthood. When I got into my dream college, Amanda suddenly decided the same school was perfect for her, despite previously showing no interest. When I bought my first car, Amanda borrowed it without asking and returned it with an empty tank and a mysterious dent. As we grew older, we naturally drifted apart. I focused on building my career in event management, while Amanda bounced between jobs and relationships. We maintained a cordial relationship during holidays and family gatherings, but the closeness sisters should share was never fully realized. Everything shifted when Amanda met Greg. He was charming on the surface, but lacked ambition and financial stability. Their relationship moved quickly, and within a year they were married in a lavish ceremony that I later discovered was funded by credit cards. Greg worked sporadically as a construction contractor, but seemed more interested in his weekend fishing trips than providing for his new family. From the moment Amanda introduced Greg to James, there was tension. Greg seemed intimidated by James's success and education, often making snide remarks about corporate sellouts, while accepting James's generosity when bills came due. Amanda adopted her husband's attitude, criticizing James's long work hours or his practical approach to finances, despite the fact that we had helped them with rent on several occasions. The news of Amanda's pregnancy came during a particularly difficult time in my life. After 2 years of trying to conceive James, and I had started discussing fertility treatments. The specialist had just informed us that I had complications that might make conception challenging, and we were processing this difficult news when Amanda called, bubbling with excitement about her pregnancy. I felt ashamed of the jealousy that surged through me. While trying to genuinely congratulate my sister, I couldn't help but wonder why it was so easy for her when it was so difficult for me. James noticed my forced smile during the call and held me as I cried afterward. His kindness made me feel both grateful and guilty for my negative emotions. "Renee," he whispered, stroking my hair. "It's okay to feel sad about our situation while still being happy for Amanda. Your feelings are valid, but this could be a chance to heal your relationship with your sister. Being an aunt might be a beautiful experience." James was always the peacemaker. He encouraged me to reach out to Amanda to offer support during her pregnancy, despite our strained relationship. I started accompanying her to doctor appointments when Greg was too busy help decorate the nursery and organized her baby shower. All the while I tried to ignore the sting when relatives commented on how Amanda was born to be a mother. During those months, I noticed something odd. Whenever James would join us for family dinners or events, Amanda seemed unusually tense. She would either avoid him completely or make uncomfortable jokes about him being the perfect husband. When James offered to help set up the crib or install the car seat, Amanda would become irritable, insisting that Greg would handle it, though he rarely did. I attributed her behavior to pregnancy hormones and our complicated history. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs that something more troubling was brewing beneath the surface. The night of James's accident remains a blur of raindrops and sirens. I was preparing dinner, expecting him home by 7 as usual. When my phone rang at 8:15, I assumed he was working late. Instead, it was a voice I didn't recognize informing me that my husband had been in a serious accident and was being transported to Harborview Medical Center. The 20-minute drive to the hospital was the longest of my life. Rain pounded against my windshield as I navigated through traffic, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in, bargaining for James's life. "Please let him be okay. Please give us more time. Please don't take him from me." By the time I skidded into the emergency parking lot and ran through the automatic doors, soaked and breathless, it was too late. The doctor's face told me everything before he spoke a word. James had suffered catastrophic internal injuries. He never regained consciousness. He was gone before I could say goodbye. I collapsed into a plastic chair in the waiting room, unable to process what I was hearing. How could James, who had been kissing me goodbye that very morning, no longer exist in this world? How could someone so full of life ideas and love simply vanish? The emptiness that opened inside me that night was vast and bottomless. When I called Amanda to share the devastating news, her response struck me as odd, even through my grief. There was a moment of silence followed by a quiet, "Oh," that lacked the shock or emotion I expected. When she finally spoke again, her words were appropriate, expressing sorrow and offering help, but her tone remained detached, almost calculating. At the time, I attributed it to shock or her awkwardness around emotional situations. The following days passed in a fog as I made funeral arrangements, notified friends and colleagues, and tried to comprehend my new reality. Our home, once warm with James's presence, felt hollow and foreign. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching his coffee mug, his reading glasses, his side of the bed that would never again bear his weight. James's funeral was well attended. He had been loved by many, respected at work, and valued in our community. Friends shared stories of his kindness and intelligence, bringing both tears and laughter. I stood numbly beside his casket, accepting hugs and condolences from faces that blurred together in my grief. Amanda arrived with Noah, now 11 months old. While many people cooed over the baby, trying to find moments of joy amid the sadness, I noticed Amanda's attention was elsewhere. Her eyes kept drifting to the framed photo of our house that stood among James's memorabilia, part of a display celebrating his life and accomplishments. During the reception, I caught glimpses of Amanda engaged in hushed conversations with a man I didn't recognize. When I approached, she quickly introduced him as a friend helping with some paperwork, but their discussion ceased abruptly. Later, I overheard fragments of their conversation, including terms like inheritance and legal rights. But in my grief, I couldn't focus on what seemed like trivial mysteries. The days after the funeral were perhaps even harder than the event itself. Without the tasks of planning and the support of gathered loved ones, I was truly alone with my loss. I began the painful process of sorting through James's belongings, each item a bittersweet reminder of our shared life. In his office desk, I found birthday cards I had given him over the years, carefully preserved in a folder labeled Renee. There were ticket stubs from concerts we had attended, photos from our trips, and small notes we had written to each other. James had kept every tangible memory of our relationship, a realization that brought both comfort and fresh waves of grief. Among his papers, I discovered a sealed envelope with my name written in his neat handwriting. I set it aside, not yet ready to read what might be his final words to me. Whatever message he had prepared for this unthinkable scenario would have to wait until I could bear it. As I continued organizing our affairs, my phone pinged with a message from Amanda. It was an invitation to Noah's first birthday party scheduled for the following weekend. My initial reaction was refusal. How could I celebrate anything when my heart was still shattered? The timing seemed insensitive at best. Yet a small voice sounding remarkably like James reminded me that life continues even when it feels impossible. Noah was innocent in all this, and as his aunt, I had a role to play in his life. James would have wanted me to go to maintain family connections, even through my pain. With reluctance, I texted Amanda that I would attend, though I might not stay long. Her reply came quickly, with an enthusiasm that felt jarring. "Great. We have some important announcements to make. It wouldn't be the same without you there." The message left me with an uneasy feeling I couldn't quite place. On the day of Noah's birthday party, I forced myself out of bed and into clothes suitable for a celebration. The face in the mirror looked like a stranger's, pale and hollow-eyed with grief, etched into lines that hadn't existed a month ago. I applied makeup with trembling hands, trying to create the illusion of normalcy, and selected a gift for Noah, a stuffed elephant that James had actually picked out months earlier, anticipating this day. Amanda and Greg had recently moved to a surprisingly upscale neighborhood, a change that had raised eyebrows in the family, given their previously precarious finances. Their new home was a spacious colonial with manicured gardens and a circular driveway now filled with cars. The contrast between their apparent prosperity and my emotional bankruptcy felt especially cruel that day. Inside the house was transformed into a jungle-themed extravaganza. Professional decorations adorned every surface, a catering team arranged elaborate food displays, and a photographer captured each moment. The scale of the celebration seemed excessive for a 1-year-old who wouldn't remember any of it, but I kept this thought to myself as I placed Noah's gift on an already overflowing table. As I entered the main room, conversations hushed momentarily. Several guests, many of whom I didn't recognize, gave me pitying glances before resuming their discussions in lowered voices. My parents, who had flown in for both the funeral and birthday, approached with concerned expressions, enveloping me in a hug that nearly broke my fragile composure. "We didn't expect you to come, sweetheart," my mother whispered. "How are you holding up?" "I'm here because James would have wanted me to be—" I answered, the lump in my throat making speech difficult. "He loved Noah." Something flickered across my father's face at those words, a micro-expression of discomfort that registered even through my grief fog. Before I could question it, Amanda swept into the room carrying Noah, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Seeing Noah sent an unexpected pang through my heart. At 1-year-old, he had James's curly hair and the same shape to his eyes, coincidences of genetics that felt like tiny ghosts haunting me. I had noticed these similarities before, but had attributed them to my desire to see connections where none existed. Now, with James gone, these phantom resemblances seemed to taunt me with what might have been if we had succeeded in having our own child. "Renee, you made it." Amanda's voice was overly bright, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She approached, shifting Noah to one hip so she could kiss my cheek. "You look, well, considering. We're so glad you could join us for this special day." I forced a smile, reaching out to touch Noah's small hand. "Wouldn't miss it. Happy birthday, little one." For the next hour, I navigated the party on autopilot, making appropriate small talk, declining champagne in favor of water, and trying to ignore the whispered conversations that stopped when I approached. Several times I caught Amanda watching me intently, an anticipatory gleam in her eye that made me increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, after the cake had been cut and Noah had been cleaned to frosting, Amanda clinked a spoon against her glass, calling for attention. The room quieted as she moved to the center, still holding Noah. Greg stood nearby, his expression unreadable. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate our beautiful son's first birthday," Amanda began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "This past year has been full of joy, challenges, and revelations. Today I want to share something important with all of you, especially with my sister Renee." The room seemed to hold its collective breath as Amanda turned to face me directly. My stomach knotted with inexplicable dread. "Renee, I know you're going through an unimaginable time right now, and what I'm about to say might be difficult to hear, but the truth needs to come out." She paused, shifting Noah higher on her hip. "This beautiful boy isn't just your nephew. He's also your husband's son." The words hit me like physical blows. Around the room, gasps and murmurs erupted, but they seemed distant, as if I were underwater. Amanda continued, speaking into the stunned silence. "James and I had a brief relationship during a difficult period in your marriage. Noah is the result. We have DNA evidence." She gestured to Greg, who stepped forward with a folder. James knew the truth and had actually updated his will to provide for his son. As Noah's mother and legal guardian, I'm entitled to half of James's estate, including the house valued at $800,000. The room spun around me. James, my James. The man who had held me through nights of disappointment when pregnancy tests came back negative. The man who wrote me love notes and left them in my laptop bag. The man whose integrity and faithfulness I had never once questioned. Greg opened the folder, removing what appeared to be a legal document and a lab report. "We have everything in order. The will clearly states that in the event of James's death, his biological child receives half of all assets. We're not trying to take advantage, just securing what legally belongs to Noah." I stared at the documents from across the room, unable to move closer, unable to process what was happening. Every eye was on me, waiting for the devastated reaction of a woman learning her recently deceased husband had not only cheated, but fathered a child with her own sister. But something wasn't right. Through the shock and confusion, a small voice of reason whispered in my mind, "This couldn't be true. Not James." And there was something else, something important I was forgetting in the heat of the moment. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I see," I said quietly, fighting to keep my voice level and my expression neutral. The urge to laugh bubbled up unexpectedly, a hysteria born of absurdity rather than humor. I suppressed it, knowing it would only make me appear unhinged. "May I see those documents?" I asked, stepping forward with more composure than I felt. Amanda handed them over with a triumphant smile that didn't quite mask her nervousness. As I scanned the pages, noting inconsistencies in formatting and James's signature that didn't quite match the one I knew so well, I simply nodded. "I need some time to process this," I said, finally returning the papers. "If you'll excuse me." Without waiting for a response, I walked out of the party, leaving shocked whispers in my wake. It was only in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, that I remembered the letter from James, still waiting at home, and the critical information that would dismantle Amanda's entire story. The drive home passed in a blur of shock and swirling thoughts. Amanda's accusation echoed in my mind alongside the murmurs and gasps of the party guests. How many of them believed her story? How many were now picturing James as an unfaithful husband who had betrayed not just his marriage vows, but his character? The thought of his reputation being tarnished when he wasn't here to defend himself fueled a growing anger within me. Once home, I headed straight for our bedroom, where I had placed the sealed letter from James in my nightstand drawer. My hands trembled as I broke the seal, unfolding the pages covered in his familiar handwriting. Taking a deep breath, I began to read. "My dearest Renee," the letter began, "if you're reading this, something has happened to me, and I'm so sorry for the pain you must be feeling. There are some things I need to tell you, things I should have shared years ago, but was too afraid to lose you." James went on to explain that shortly before we met, Amanda had made advances toward him at a mutual friend's party. They had both been attending solo, and she had flirted aggressively, despite knowing he was only recently single and not looking for a relationship. He had politely declined her interest and thought little of it until we began dating seriously months later, and he realized the connection. When I met you, Renee, I had no idea you were related to Amanda until you suggested dinner with your sister and her date. The moment Amanda saw me with you, something changed in her. I could see jealousy and resentment in her eyes, though she played it off well. Over the years, she's made several inappropriate suggestions and comments when you weren't around. I always rejected her advances and tried to maintain a respectful distance while still being part of your family. My hands shook harder as I turned to the next page, my sister's betrayal cutting deep. But it was the next paragraph that completely invalidated Amanda's claim. There's something else you should know, something I've never found the right moment to tell you. Before we met, I had a health scare that led to some difficult decisions. After recovering from testicular cancer in my 20s, I underwent a procedure that left me unable to father biological children. I was sterile before I ever met you, Renee. The letter continued explaining how James had worried about telling me, fearing I might leave him for someone who could give me biological children. By the time he realized I would have accepted him regardless, we were already experiencing the pain of fertility struggles, and he couldn't bear to add to my disappointment by revealing it had been impossible all along. I'm so sorry for not telling you sooner. I convinced myself it was better to let you believe we both had fertility issues rather than place the blame entirely on me. It was cowardly and you deserved better. I hope someday you can forgive me for this deception. The final pages contained his expressions of love, his hopes for my future happiness and practical information about our finances and affairs. But my mind was fixed on the bombshell that completely invalidated Amanda's claim. Noah couldn't possibly be James's biological child. My husband had been sterile for over a decade. With renewed purpose, I began searching through our filing cabinet for James's medical records. There, in a folder labeled Medical History, I found documentation of his cancer treatment and the subsequent procedure that had rendered him sterile. There were follow-up appointments confirming the procedure's permanence dated years before we met. I sat at our kitchen table spreading the medical documents before me, a strange calm settling over me. I needed more evidence to counter Amanda's claims conclusively. I reached for my phone and called Dr. Peterson James's longtime urologist, who had continued to monitor his health after the cancer. Dr. Peterson, this is Renee Wilson, James's wife, I said when he answered. I know this is unusual, but I need to confirm something about James's medical history. It's extremely important. The doctor was initially hesitant, citing patient confidentiality, but when I explained the situation, his tone changed. Mrs. Wilson, I treated your husband for over 10 years. I can confirm unequivocally that due to his treatment, James was not capable of fathering children. The procedure was successful and permanent, confirmed by multiple tests over the years. Would you be willing to provide a written statement to that effect? I asked, already thinking ahead to the confrontation that would inevitably come. Under these circumstances, yes. I'll have my office prepare something official tomorrow. And Mrs. Wilson, I'm very sorry about your loss. James was a good man. After hanging up, I returned to James's office, searching for any additional evidence that might help explain Amanda's actions. In the bottom drawer of his desk, I found a small journal I hadn't known existed. The entries were sporadic, mostly reflections on work projects and our relationship, but several entries from the past 2 years mentioned uncomfortable interactions with Amanda. One entry from 18 months ago was particularly revealing. Amanda cornered me at the family Christmas party again. When Renee went to help with dinner, I suggested we catch up properly sometime without Renee knowing. I shut it down immediately, but I'm worried about her behavior escalating. Don't want to tell Renee and damage their relationship, but this is becoming a problem. Another entry dated just 3 months before Noah's birth. Awkward situation today. A call asking for help moving furniture since Greg was out of town. When I arrived, it was clear nothing needed moving. She was dressed inappropriately and had wine ready. I made an excuse about an emergency at work and left immediately. Should I tell Renee, it would break her heart, especially with the baby coming. We'll keep my distance from A without being obvious about it. The pieces were falling into place. Amanda had pursued James, been rejected, and now was attempting to claim her son was his, presumably for financial gain. The will she had presented was almost certainly a forgery. But what about Greg? Where did he fit into this deception? I pulled out my laptop and searched social media for any information about him. His profile showed little activity in recent months, but scrolling back, I found a significant gap in posts around the time Amanda would have conceived Noah. Comments from friends asked where he'd disappeared to, with no responses from Greg. On a hunch, I contacted Mark, a mutual friend who knew Greg from college. After catching up briefly, I carefully broached the subject. Mark, did Greg ever mention any issues between him and Amanda last year, particularly around the time Noah was conceived? There was a pause before Mark answered. I'm not sure I should be talking about this, Renee. Please, Mark. It's important. There are some serious allegations being made, and I need to understand what happened. He sighed heavily. Look, Greg came to stay with me for about 2 weeks last year, around January or February. He was pretty torn up. Said he and Amanda had been fighting because he found messages between her and some guy. He was questioning whether their relationship was solid enough for a baby. But then he went back home, and the next thing I heard, they were expecting. I figured they worked things out. Did he ever express any doubts about the baby being his? Another pause. Once when he was drunk, he said the timing was convenient and made some comment about Amanda trapping him. But he never said it outright, and I didn't push. Why are you asking about this now, especially after James's passing? I thanked Mark for his honesty without elaborating further. One more phone call yielded the final piece of the puzzle. Sarah, who had been friends with both Amanda and me since high school, revealed that Amanda had been seeing someone named Daniel around the time Noah was conceived. I assumed you knew, Sarah said, sounding uncomfortable. She swore it was over before she got pregnant, but the timing was pretty close. I never told you because she said it would just cause unnecessary drama, and she and Greg had decided to make their marriage work regardless. By evening, I had assembled a considerable amount of evidence contradicting Amanda's claim. The medical records proving James's sterility, the journal entries documenting Amanda's inappropriate advances and testimony suggesting Amanda had been involved with someone else around the time of conception. Now I needed a plan. This wasn't just about the house or money anymore. It was about defending James's memory and exposing a lie that would have profound implications for everyone involved, including innocent Noah. I needed legal advice before confronting Amanda. The following morning, I contacted Patricia Lawson, a family attorney recommended by a colleague. In her stylish downtown office, surrounded by credentials and family photos, I laid out the entire situation from James's death to Amanda's shocking announcement and all the evidence I had gathered. Patricia listened attentively, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her expression serious. Renee, you have a very strong case to refute your sister's claims. The medical evidence alone should be sufficient to prove James could not be Noah's father. The journal entries and witness statements regarding your sister's behavior establish a pattern that supports your position. She flipped through the copies of Amanda's supposed evidence. As for this will, I'm almost certain it's fraudulent. The formatting does not match standard legal documents, and there are several red flags in the language used. Plus, I can subpoena your husband's actual legal records through the proper channels. What's the best way to proceed? I asked, feeling more confident with a professional assessment backing my instincts. I recommend we prepare a formal response, but attempt to resolve this privately first. A public legal battle would be emotionally draining and potentially damaging to your nephew who is innocent in all this. Let's arrange a meeting with Amanda, her legal representation if she has any, and your parents if you feel their presence would be helpful. I nodded, agreeing that Noah's well-being had to be considered. I want to clear James's name, but I don't want to destroy my family in the process if it can be avoided. One more thing, Patricia added as I gathered my documents. Have you considered why your sister is doing this? Beyond the obvious financial motivation, such an elaborate deception suggests deeper issues. The question stayed with me as I left her office. Why would Amanda go to such lengths knowing her claims could be disproven? Was it pure financial desperation, or was there something more complex driving her actions? Back home, I decided to investigate Amanda and Greg's financial situation more thoroughly. A few phone calls to family members revealed concerning information. Apparently, Greg's contracting business had failed 6 months ago, leaving them with significant debt. The new house they'd moved into was rented, not purchased, despite Amanda's implications otherwise. And according to our cousin who worked at a local bank, Amanda had been denied several loan applications recently. The lavish birthday party suddenly made sense as a backdrop for her announcement, a way to create the illusion of prosperity while setting the stage for her inheritance claim. The timing of her announcement so soon after James's death, when I was at my most vulnerable, was calculated to minimize my resistance. With a clearer understanding of the situation, I contacted my parents to fill them in on what I'd discovered. They were initially shocked into silence. Then my mother began to cry. "I knew something wasn't right about her story," my father said, finally, his voice tight with anger. "But I never imagined she would go this far." "The worst part is this isn't even surprising," my mother added once she'd composed herself. "Amanda has always wanted what you have, Renee. Remember when you got that scholarship, and suddenly she needed private art lessons that cost exactly the same amount? Or when you bought your first car, and she wrecked hers the next week, so Dad would buy her a new one?" "But this is different," I said. "This is accusing James of infidelity, claiming her child is his, forging legal documents. These are serious offenses." "We'll support whatever you decide to do," my father assured me. "But is there any way to resolve this without completely destroying your relationship with Amanda? She's still your sister, and Noah is still your nephew." I appreciated their concern, but I also recognized they were thinking as parents trying to preserve family harmony. My priority had to be defending James's memory and protecting what we had built together. "I'm meeting with her this weekend at my house with my attorney present. I'd like you both to be there as well, not to take sides, but to help keep the conversation productive if possible." With their agreement, I sent a message to Amanda requesting the meeting. Her response was immediate and overconfident. "Happy to discuss the details of the inheritance. We can bring our attorney to finalize the paperwork." The trap was set. Now I just needed to prepare myself emotionally for the confrontation to come. I spent the next 2 days gathering additional evidence. Dr. Peterson provided an official letter confirming James's medical condition. I had copies made of all relevant documents and organized them chronologically. I even contacted the Bar Association to verify the credentials of Amanda's supposed attorney, discovering that no one by that name was registered in our state. By Saturday morning, I had transformed our dining room into a makeshift conference room. Documents were arranged neatly, water and coffee were prepared, and Patricia arrived early to review our strategy once more. "Remember," she advised, "stay calm regardless of what is said. Emotional outbursts will only complicate matters. Let me do most of the talking and only address specific points when I indicate you should." My parents arrived next, both looking anxious but determined. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "We're here for you, sweetheart," while my father squeezed my shoulder supportively. At precisely 11 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Taking a deep breath, I went to answer it, steeling myself for whatever came next. Amanda stood on my doorstep looking polished and confident, wearing an expensive outfit that probably pushed her credit cards further into the red. Beside her was the same man from the birthday party carrying a briefcase and attempting to project authority. Greg was noticeably absent. "Where's Greg?" I asked as I let them in. Amanda waved dismissively. "He's with Noah. This is Martin Caldwell, our attorney. He's handling all the legal aspects of the inheritance." I nodded without commenting and led them to the dining room where my parents and Patricia waited. Amanda faltered slightly upon seeing them, her confident stride hesitating before she composed herself. "I didn't realize this would be a family intervention," she said with forced lightness. "We're just here to finalize the details of Noah's inheritance." Patricia stood extending her hand professionally. "Patricia Lawson, family law attorney. I'm representing Renee. Shall we begin?" We all took seats around the table, an uncomfortable silence settling over us until Patricia opened her folder. "Ms. Wilson, I understand you're claiming that your son Noah is the biological child of the late James Wilson, and on that basis, you're asserting a right to half of his estate, specifically the house valued at approximately $800,000. Is that correct?" Amanda straightened in her chair. "That's right. I have the will and DNA evidence right here." She nodded to Martin, who removed the now familiar documents from his briefcase. Patricia examined them briefly before setting them aside. Before we discuss these documents, I'd like to address some fundamental facts. Are you aware that James Wilson underwent treatment for testicular cancer in his 20s? Amanda blinked, clearly caught off guard. I know he had some health issues before he met Renee. These weren't just health issues, Ms. Wilson. Following his cancer treatment, James underwent a procedure that rendered him permanently sterile. This was confirmed by multiple tests over the years. He was physically incapable of fathering a child. Martin shifted uncomfortably as Patricia placed Dr. Peterson's letter and the medical records on the table. These are official medical documents verifying James's condition signed by his urologist, who treated him for over a decade. Amanda's face flushed, but she recovered quickly. Those could be faked. Our DNA test proves Noah is James's son. Interesting that you mentioned fake documents, Patricia continued smoothly. I've taken the liberty of contacting the legal registry regarding this supposed will. There is no record of James Wilson filing such a document. Furthermore, the formatting, language, and structure do not conform to legal standards for wills in this state. She turned to Martin. Mr. Caldwell, I'm not familiar with your practice. Which firm are you with? Martin cleared his throat nervously. I'm an independent practitioner specializing in estate matters. I see. And your bar number? His hesitation was answer enough. My mother gasped softly while my father's expression darkened. Patricia pressed on. Mr. Caldwell impersonating an attorney is a serious offense. Before we continue, I should inform you that misrepresenting yourself in this capacity could result in criminal charges. The color drained from Martin's face. He looked at Amanda, who was now visibly agitated, her earlier confidence evaporating. This is ridiculous, Amanda snapped. You're just trying to keep everything for yourself, Renee. You always were selfish. Amanda, my father interjected, his voice stern. This has gone far enough. We know James couldn't have fathered Noah. We know you've created false documents and brought someone to pose as a lawyer. What were you thinking? You don't understand. We needed that money. Greg left me with nothing but debts after he found out, she blurted, then immediately looked as if she regretted the admission. The room went silent. After Greg found out what? My mother asked quietly. Amanda's composure crumbled entirely. Tears welled in her eyes as the facade of righteous indignation collapsed. That Noah isn't his, she whispered. He did the math when Noah was born prematurely but still at full birth weight. He confronted me and I couldn't deny it. So you decided to claim James was the father instead. Why James? I asked, finding my voice at last. Because everyone loved James. She spat, bitterness seeping through. Perfect James with his perfect job and his perfect marriage to my perfect sister. He rejected me, you know, before you even met him. I saw him first at that party, but he wasn't interested. Then suddenly he's dating you, and everyone's talking about what an amazing couple you are. The pieces clicked into place with painful clarity. This wasn't just about money, though. That was certainly a factor. It was about jealousy, rejection, and a twisted desire to claim something, anything that belonged to me, even posthumously. Who is Noah's actual father? My mother asked, her voice trembling. Amanda looked down at her hands. His name is Daniel. He was a client at the interior design studio where I was working. It was brief. He's married and wants nothing to do with us. So you thought you'd use James's death as an opportunity to solve your problems. I said, the hurt and anger I'd been controlling finally surfacing. You'd tarnish his memory claim he betrayed me with my own sister, all to get your hands on our house. Martin, who had been silent during these revelations, abruptly stood. I think I should leave. I was not aware of the full situation when I agreed to help. He looked genuinely uncomfortable, suggesting Amanda had misled him as well. Before you go, Patricia interjected, I'd like your real name for the record, and I need all copies of the fraudulent documents. After he complied and hurriedly left the room, fell silent again, heavy with the weight of Amanda's deception and the family crisis it had created. What happens now? Amanda asked finally, her voice small, all pretense gone. Patricia looked at me, leaving the decision in my hands. I took a moment to consider my options. the anger and hurt warring with memories of growing up with Amanda, of hoping for a closer relationship, of James encouraging me to build bridges rather than walls. Legally, I could pursue this, I said slowly. Forgery, defamation, fraud. These are serious offenses, Amanda. She paled, tears streaming down her face now. Renee, please. I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. The debts, the mortgage, Noah's expenses, everything was falling apart. My parents watched silently, their expressions a mixture of disappointment and concern. This was their youngest daughter, despite her flaws and terrible choices. I thought about what James would do in this situation. He had always been compassionate, always believed in second chances, but he had also valued truth and integrity above all else. I won't take legal action, I said finally, but there are conditions. Amanda looked up, hope flickering across her tear-stained face. First, you will make a formal retraction to everyone who was at that birthday party. You will clear James's name completely. She nodded quickly. Second, you need professional help, Amanda. This pattern of jealousy and deception has gone too far. I'll help with Noah and with finding you stable work, but only if you agree to counseling. And third, I continued, my voice firm, you need to tell Noah the truth when he's old enough to understand, not about this specific situation, but about who his father is. He deserves that much. Amanda agreed to all conditions, looking both relieved and ashamed. My parents offered to take her home, the four of us, knowing that rebuilding trust would be a long and uncertain process. As they prepared to leave, Amanda turned to me, vulnerability replacing her earlier hostility. Why aren't you taking legal action? After what I did, most people would. I thought carefully before answering. Because punishing you won't bring James back or honor his memory. He believed in forgiveness and second chances, and despite everything, you're still my sister and Noah is still my nephew. After they left, Patricia congratulated me on my handling of the situation. That was remarkably compassionate given the circumstances. I'm not sure compassion had much to do with it, I admitted. I'm just too exhausted by grief to take on the additional burden of a legal battle or family destruction. As Patricia gathered her materials, she paused. Grief takes different forms, Renee. Sometimes the kindest acts come from the deepest pain. James would be proud of how you handled this. Once alone, I walked through our house, James's and mine, touching familiar surfaces and remembering the life we'd built. For the first time since his death, I felt a small sense of peace amidst the sorrow. I had protected his legacy and possibly taken the first step toward healing a lifelong family wound. That night, I dreamed of James. He was smiling, telling me everything would be okay. I wasn't sure if I believed it yet, but for the first time since the accident, it seemed possible. The 6 months following our confrontation were a period of slow healing and gradual transformation. Grief, I discovered, doesn't follow a linear path. Some days I woke up feeling almost normal, able to function, and even smile at memories of James. Other days, the weight of his absence crushed me anew, leaving me barely able to get out of bed. Throughout this journey, I found unexpected strength in keeping my promise to help Amanda rebuild her life. Initially, it was just practical assistance, helping her find an affordable apartment after she could no longer maintain the expensive rental and connecting her with job opportunities through my professional network. But slowly, our interactions evolved into something resembling a genuine relationship, perhaps for the first time in our adult lives. Amanda kept her word about retracting her claims. She contacted each person who had attended Noah's birthday party, admitting she had lied about James being Noah's father. Some relationships were permanently damaged by her deception, but the truth provided me with vindication and peace. The most surprising development was Amanda's commitment to counseling. Her therapist helped her confront the deep-seated jealousy and insecurity that had driven her actions throughout her life. During one particularly emotional family session that I attended at her request, she revealed childhood feelings of inadequacy and invisible competition that had shaped her view of our relationship. I always felt like I was living in your shadow, she confessed, her voice small but steady. You were the smart one, the responsible one, the one everyone praised. I never felt like I could measure up, so I started wanting what you had instead of finding my own path. Understanding the roots of her behavior didn't excuse it, but it helped me see my sister through a more compassionate lens. I also recognized my own role in our dysfunctional dynamic, how my success and occasional condescension had fed her insecurities rather than helping her overcome them. Noah became an unexpected source of joy in my life. Despite the painful circumstances, I grew to love my nephew deeply. At 18 months old, he was walking, babbling, and developing a personality that was entirely his own, not a reflection of James or anyone else. Being his aunt gave me a connection to family that helped fill some of the emptiness James's death had created. During this period, I also had to confront my own future. Our house, once filled with dreams of the family James and I had hoped to create, now felt too large and empty for just me. After much consideration, I decided not to sell, but to repurpose it instead. The spare bedroom we had designated as a future nursery became my home office as I transitioned to freelance event management, allowing me more flexibility to process my grief and support Amanda when needed. The most healing decision came 3 months after the confrontation. Using a portion of the life insurance money James had left, I established a small scholarship fund in his name at the local community college where he had occasionally taught coding workshops. The James Wilson Technology Scholarship would help students with financial need pursue careers in software engineering, ensuring his passion for technology and education would benefit others for years to come. When the fund was officially announced, several of James's colleagues and friends reached out sharing stories of how he had mentored them or solved seemingly impossible problems with his characteristic patience and creativity. These stories were precious gifts, allowing me to see dimensions of my husband I hadn't fully appreciated during our life together. Amanda attended the small ceremony, launching the scholarship Noah in her arms. After the formal proceedings, she approached me with uncharacteristic hesitation. "This is perfect," she said, gesturing to the scholarship plaque. James would have loved knowing he was helping students who couldn't afford education otherwise. He always said his community college classes gave him more satisfaction than his corporate work. I replied, touched by her sincere appreciation of who James had been. A moment of comfortable silence passed between us, perhaps the first in our contentious history. Then Amanda spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Renee. Not just for what I did after he died, but for never really giving James a chance when he was alive. I was so caught up in my own jealousy that I couldn't see what a genuinely good person he was." The apology, delivered without expectation or agenda, felt like the closing of one chapter and the possible beginning of another. That evening, I invited Amanda and Noah to dinner at my house, the first time they had visited since the confrontation. As we sat in the kitchen, James and I had renovated together, eating pasta and watching Noah gleefully make a mess with his portion. I felt a glimmer of the family connection I had always wanted with my sister. It wasn't perfect. We both said awkward things and navigated around painful topics. But it was honest in a way our relationship had never been before. When Amanda left that night, we hugged genuinely without the stiffness that had characterized our embraces for years. The healing extended beyond family relationships. I began attending a support group for young widows and widowers, finding solace in the company of others who understood the specific challenges of losing a spouse early in life. Through their stories and shared experiences, I learned that moving forward didn't mean forgetting or replacing James, but rather carrying him with me into whatever came next. 1 year after James's death, I stood at his grave with a small bouquet of sunflowers, his favorite. The raw agony had softened into a more manageable ache, a permanent change in my heart's landscape rather than a consuming fire. "You wouldn't believe what's happened this year," I told him, feeling neither self-conscious nor crazy for speaking aloud. "Amanda and I are actually getting along. Noah is walking and says my name now, sort of. I'm running my own business from home. The scholarship has already helped 3 students." A gentle breeze rustled the cemetery's trees, and I smiled, imagining it as James's response. "I miss you every day," I continued, "but I'm doing okay. I'm living the life you would want for me. I'm finding purpose and even moments of joy." As I placed the flowers against his headstone, I felt a sense of peace that had been elusive since his death. James was gone, but what we had shared couldn't be erased or diminished, not by death, and certainly not by Amanda's desperate scheme. Our love had been real and transformative, changing both of us for the better. Walking back to my car, I noticed a text from Amanda asking if I would join them at the park the following weekend for Noah's first time on the swings. I replied with a simple, yes, feeling grateful for this unexpected new chapter. The journey through grief is never truly complete, and I knew there would be difficult days ahead. But standing in the sunshine, I finally believed what James had always told me during our hardest moments, that even through the darkest times, there is always a path forward if you're brave enough to take it one step at a time. In honoring James's memory, defending his legacy, and finding compassion, even for those who had wronged us both, I had discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was a life worth living, filled with meaning, connection, and the enduring presence of a love that even death couldn't erase. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you find the strength to respond with compassion rather than revenge? Share your stories in the comments below. If this journey through grief and healing resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. Thank you for being part of this community where we can share our deepest hurts and greatest triumphs. Remember, sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our darkest moments.